Important for whoever is mayor to enable the rest of the council to bring their ideas forward, and the best ideas will rise to the top. Once that is done, then it's the mayor's job to help steer that through all the various steps to make it real. So instead of sitting down and saying, oh, the mayor's going to do all the work, or here's his ideas only, that's not the way it works. I've helped build solutions and bring together teams in various community and planning groups for many years. So on October 20th, please vote for Rob Wixom.
Is this microphone good?
Yeah.
Good, all right. Good evening. My name is Mayor Richard Atwell, and let me start by saying that it has been an honor to serve our community as your mayor over the last 4 years. During that time, I've been listening to your concerns and taking your advice. These conversations first took place in my office when I initiated my open door policy. And over the last 4 years, as I've toured our community, these conversations have continued with seniors, students, residents, businesses, nonprofits, and others. And I've discovered a common theme. We are all very passionate about our community. Saanich has a rich history going back 112 years, and many mayors and councillors have come before you tonight, as we are here before you, to share with you our vision of the future. Tonight, we are debating the issues that matter to you, issues that concern how we will best manage our city and how it will lead to greater prosperity. And this is what I think the top issues are. Top issues. Addressing traffic. Now, we've been living with these issues for many, many, many years. A whole council term has gone by, and we're still dealing with traffic and safety, keeping taxes in line with inflation, improving housing affordability, and protecting the natural environment. And while you do need people that can work together, and the council that forms will be the council that forms, but I think what is key is the approach. How are you going to go about solving these issues? And these are some ideas that I think are along the road to making some of those inroads. On traffic and safety, we know that engineers will say the road is safe, but we're all looking for increased levels of safety. And what's worked well at the CRD has been a traffic safety commission that I think we need to bring as a concept to Saanich, where citizens play a role in determining issues around lighting and safety and crosswalks and speed. For the environment, we know that the EDPA didn't work, and we need to do something better. In order to address that, I think we need to bring in the scientific community. We need a panel for that. So these are just two ideas. They're approaches on how we get there. We're all sharing an interest in the same issues, but how we approach the issue is key. Thank you so much.
Hello. Is my son here? Hello? Hi, I'm Fred Haynes, and I'm delighted to be here tonight.
Fred, use another mic. There should be 4 up there.
Is this working?
You've got a carrot. Hello? Hello? Okay. I'm Fred Haynes, and I'm delighted to be here today and run for mayor. And I want to thank you for the opportunity. I also want to thank you for the opportunity for the last 4 years to work on this amazing council and deal with some of the real issues that this council has had to address. Some of the things you've heard presented today, we're already working on them, and we have been, and we've been getting results. For example, how to house all our residents, how to deal with that without building a concrete jungle, to respect the green space, to make sure that the future generations that come here have the same joy of Saanich that you have today. Some of you know that when I launched my campaign, we set up something called Place Speak. Place Speak is a geo-fenced web app that lets the Saanich residents tell us what you feel about Saanich and the things you think are important. And the things that you think are important on Place Speak helped inform my campaign. And it turns out they were housing, they were transit and transport, they were green space, farms, the economy. In fact, I was delighted because it was all the things we were already working on. So when I hear people say, let's start working on them, I believe we have been working on them, and this council of 9 individuals has each done their part with their ideas brought forward to empower solutions that you've been looking for. I'm proud of this, and I'm proud of my part of that. Of course there's been healthy debate. That's democracy. No idea should get through council unless we each challenge it with our best thoughts and minds and experience, and our staff, what they think too. And we have an excellent staff working hard for you, by the way. When it earns results, when it earns approval, that's the decision of council, and we should get behind it and implement that for the best outcomes for you. On October the 20th, please think of me. I'd like to continue that work for you. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have 2 questions from the community associations that we're going to pose to you, and we'll pose them in differing order. So we'll start with Fred. First question, and you have 1 minute to answer. You'll each answer the same. 2 minutes to answer, and you each have the same
Can I make
question.
3? 1 and 2.
So the question is, what's your vision for improving Saanich's natural environment, and how will you implement it?
I think we realised this last term that the environment was an issue that tore Saanich apart and pitted residents against residents. The EDPA was rescinded. But before we rescinded it, we brought back the 2012 environmental protections of trees, streamside, fill, etc., that made Saanich a leader in 2012. I understand there's anxiety about how long it's going to take to bring forward a more wholesome biodiversity strategy. This council set aside $250,000 to move that forward, and I'm proposing that if elected, I would create something called a Mayor's Standing Committee. A Mayor's Standing Committee lets council grab it and make sure it goes forward. It's not my committee, it's a Mayor's Standing Committee that is handed over to council and some members of the community, scientists, residents. We already learned a great deal from the Diamond Head and from the 2.5 years of consulting with residents. A full biodiversity strategy includes all lands, not just the 2,300 that were identified under the EPA. It includes parks, it includes boulevards, it includes looking for native species, ornamentals, and food. And I believe that we can accelerate that and bring it back to you and present it to you, get your feedback on it, and see where that takes us. I'm committed to doing that in the most efficient and speedy way possible, and I think it's what you deserve, and I think it's what you've been asking for.
Thank you for the question. I'm not sure that standing committees are the mechanism. They typically are a subset of council, and I think they do work for some administrative functions. But for something as big as the environment, I think the whole council needs to be involved and play a role. But at the same time, we're all trying to get elected. We're all here. And to take, I think, the bias and the worry about getting re-elected out of the equation and to do the right thing for the community, I think in this area, and given the history of the EDPA, I believe that we need to step back from this. And I believe that an independent group of scientific practitioners, whether they be environmentalists or registered professional biologists, aquatic ecologists, and others that are working day to day in Saanich, trying to keep it green and improving it and working on world-class projects. I think that's the group that really should be charged with this, because it has become extremely politically charged over the last several years. I tried to repeal the EDPA about 2.5 years ago, and I didn't find favor with council. I eventually did. But it was a gut feeling that I had. But that was also a political feeling. And it didn't get repealed for 2.5 years, and we wasted a lot of time and money because of politics. And so I think in this case, I think it's very, very important that we have a strong scientific basis for how we're going to do this, and that we take it out of the hands of these interests and connect these individuals with yourselves to understand what you believe, what the vision is, what the future is, what's of value in your homes, on your properties, what's of value in the parks and in the natural areas. And then I think then we can come to a very solid decision we can all stand behind. Thank you.
In 1996, I joined the Chamber of Commerce Environment Committee. At that time, they were thinking about putting a tax on cigarette packages in order to stop people from throwing them out the windows. I convinced them to start looking at the environment as a profit-making center. Recycling was an opportunity for them to save money. So I'm very keen on protecting the environment and going forward in a sustainable way. When the EDPA discussion came up, I was disappointed on how it was handled. I was very disappointed that it got rescinded without replacement. I think that that was a big backwards mistake, and it's too bad for our community. There is so much work we have to do in the environment. My friend John Rowe and I have constant discussions about the watershed and what's going on with our watershed, what we're putting into our streams and rivers, which should be protected because we have valuable life systems in those streams and rivers that if they go away, we go away eventually. If our environment dies, we die. We cannot survive without what goes on in our environment. Full stop. It has to be the highest priority. Now, I'm an economist by trade, but you know what economic balance is? It's balance between the fiscal side, the social side, and the environment. If you don't have that, we die. Simple as that. So as far as I'm concerned, the more energy that we put into environment protection, the better off we're all going to be.
Thanks very much for those answers. And the second question, I'm going to start with you, Mayor Atwell. Citizen-centric decision-making. What is your strategy for improving decision-making involving staff, council, and community, as for example, the OCP?
Thank you for the question. The democracy that we live in and that we operate at the municipal level, I think, can be best described as a circle and a triangle. In the center of the circle is the mayor. Surrounded by the mayor are the councillors. And surrounded by the councillors might be committees, and it goes further and further out in the layers into the community associations and general members of the public, and other groups as well. On the other side, you have the administration, which is the typical triangle. You have a city manager at the top, directors below, and below and below, until you get to people that are working the front line and doing the work. And that has been the traditional model of getting work done at municipalities for a long time. A decision is made in council, and then it's carried over to the administration, and then sometimes you don't see the results for 2 years. And what comes back after having spent quite a lot of money is a decision that's often hard to turn down because a lot of money has been spent on it. So what I think that needs to be done is to actually overlap the circle of the council and the triangle, and replace the triangle with those 3 points that Susan was talking about. At each vertex you have the staff, you have the community, and you have the council members. They're all talking to each other and it's all connected. But in the middle is where the real work happens. And that's where the circle is. And that's where the work iterates. And that's where we watch it progress and move forward. And so there's many check-ins, so there's milestones. And the council is constantly connected to the projects because we're constantly connected to you. And you're visiting us, or we're coming to your homes, or we're talking to you, or getting emails. And too many times there are many disconnects and projects go on too long. And what I want to do is I want to work with council to come up with a better model so that the council is more permanently engaged so that we can get better results. I think that's going to achieve better results, and that's what I'd like to see going forward. The current model is okay, but I think it needs to be advanced to more modern. Thank you.
So I was involved and had been involved with the Gorge-Tilican Community Association for 20 years. The last 10 years as president. Our association has taken a proactive view of how we connect with council and with staff. It's been difficult because there's different kinds of approaches that they all take. So we have actually sat down and thought about a new way of approaching this. Number one, if a proposal comes forward from a developer, for example, rather than go to staff and find out a bunch of stuff and then maybe consult with the community, we feel that the best approach is that for the developer to come to the community, meet with the staff and the councillor all at the same table before an application is made. If you can do that, then the applicant's going to find out there's a whole bunch of things he has to think about before he proceeds with his application. He can go away and do that on his own time and then come back and present it again. The Communities Association, they're the facilitators. They're the people that say, okay, we're going to arrange for the next meeting, so they bring the neighbors in, bring the expertise in, find out and learn what this project is all about, what the impacts are going to be, before it goes to application. Once it gets to application, it'll start to sail through on a step-by-step basis, because you've crossed the T's and dotted the I's ahead of time. This is something that's just efficiency. In Victoria, they've been doing this for some time. Projects move through staffing, through the application process at a much greater rate, and save a lot of money for the developer. That's a start. You can do that with almost any project. We did that with our community gardens, for example, where we actually talked to neighbors for 2 years before we brought it back to council and got approvals.
So thank you for the question. It's a very good question. And I think the way to look at it is to understand the types of decisions that council needs to make. There's a large amount of money and a large amount of decision making about pipes, roads and things like that. Staff bring reports, they're presented to council, there's the opportunity to come to council and make a comment. Can everybody hear me? Is that better? Yeah. Then there's things like city plans, the Douglas Uptown Corridor, and there's the Parks Master Plan. And there you have a terms of reference that describes how you consult. Inform, from just inform, all the way to engage, through consultation, and get feedback. So there are different types of decisions that council reaches to you for. You just heard Rod mention development applications. We have a very robust development application process, and the community association leaders in this room and the members of those associations who participate know just how much influence and say they can have when it's done properly. We like as a council to ensure that the application goes to the community association and gets their input before it even comes to us. And then there's an iterative process before it gets approved. And we hope through that process it makes as many people happy as possible. But the big issues of the council are our city plans. And there, I believe, the Uptown Douglas Corridor was a fantastic example of a job well done for community engagement. Many of the members in this audience were on it. It came up with a very robust plan. It was presented back to the community several times, and then it came back to council. That said, for sure there's ways we can improve that. There's ways that we can enhance that. But I do believe that our reputation on the island as a city that engages its citizens is pretty good. Can we do better? Should we do better? Certainly. One example, clearly there were some errors made when we brought forward the EDPA in terms of how that was discussed. So some things, yes, we need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, all three of you. We have another question, this one on governance. How will you hold Saanich staff or Saanich administration accountable for your policy and initiatives? And we'll start with you, Rob.
Well, one of the benefits that I think I bring to the table is the fact that I've been an employer for 40 years. I know how to work with people. The most valuable part of my business is my staff. I don't have to know everything. I just have to know who to ask and bring those people to the table. So the best job that I can do as mayor is make sure that council is doing a job that makes them feel good about their work and successful, and have that trickle down to the staff. It's very simple. The staff, as I understand it right now, they're keeping their head down, they don't talk to each other, they live in silos. Why is that? What's going on? Let's get down and start talking about how we communicate and be friendly with each other. Don't be afraid to talk to somebody across the aisle, because they might have a good idea that you didn't have. Don't be jealous about things. Just get to work and look at the positive outcomes. Don't look at the barriers that stop you from achieving something. That's an approach that I take in all my work. And you know what? I have clients phone me just for advice, and I give it freely. I don't charge them for it because it's a benefit to me if I have a happy client. So it's a benefit to Saanich and the staff if we have happy clients. So if somebody comes in and says, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about this, let's be proactive. Let's help them find those answers. If we can't find those answers, let's direct them to where they might be able to find those answers. Let's look at the positive side of doing things. Don't look at the barriers for preventing things from happening. As far as I'm concerned, as an employer, we need to make sure our staff is empowered to do the work they're paid for.
Next.
Yes, thank you.
I think your question was governance and how to hold the staff accountable. Was that it? So there's a hierarchy here. The staff work for managers. The managers work for directors. The directors work for a CAO or a city manager. That person works for us, and we work for you. The accountability for us is happening right now at election time. But the accountability for the city manager is key. And the best way to do it, the best way to achieve accountability, the best way to get the results you're looking for, is to have that person under a contract that has performance goals and has a pay holdback of 20% or maybe 10%. And this is what they do in the province to achieve results. What would those performance things be? Well, they would be based on goals. These goals would be departmental goals to achieve things for you. And the employees would be operating under those goals, and they would be achieving as well. So if you don't set goals for the department, what's the result? And if the council doesn't set goals for the city manager, what is the result? Currently, we're not doing that. We need a better system in place is what we need. Maybe it needs to be merit-based for the employees, things to be looked at for sure. But it's about setting goals and holding that one employee to account. And that person wants to work for council, and that person wants to achieve. But there's more to the job than being in council meetings and serving council and making sure that papers are moving and things are being done. It's about goals. So when you look at all of our campaign material, and you look at all of our platforms and all the things that you want to achieve, right after the election, that council needs to get together and make sure that those goals are set for that individual, and that individual achieves them. If that individual doesn't, they be held accountable. Thank you.
So, under the community charter, every municipality in BC has one employee. That's the Chief Administrative Officer. Council's job is to come up with the policies that respect and will deliver the wishes of our boss, the residents of the municipality. You pay your taxes. The CAO's job is to interface with council and then do the operational side. Our current CAO, when he was hired, had a job description and expectations from council, and each year there's an annual review. And that annual review, sometimes it's called a 360, in which case you'd ask the line staff, the directors and managers, their opinions on his performance, and then council gives some opinions on the CAO's performance, and you evaluate the CAO through that process under contract. As councillors, we cannot go into the office of any of our staff and advise them on the jobs that they're doing. There's a reason for that. In the history of municipalities, what can happen is individuals like you and me would say to a councillor, I'm pretty upset about that, or I think that's wonderful and I want some more of it. And then the councillor trots in, says to one of the park staff, I'd like 5 trees please on my lawn. That is a description of what can go wrong. We're protected against that by having one staff, the CAO. It's our job to give that member of our staff, the one person, clear directives, clear understandings of where we want to go, and the support to get there. Separately, what are the items he should work on? Well, it's the things you bring us in the council chamber that then inform our opinions about housing, transport, the environment. And we design those policies and we say, knock, knock, Mr. CAO, please make that happen. And we'll evaluate you on that next year.
Now we're going to take some more questions from the audience. Karen Dearborn, the previous past president required of Cedar Hill, will submit this question.
Thank you. Candidates, do you support or oppose the speculation tax and why? We're going to start with Dr. Haynes, move to Mayor Atwell, and then to Rob Woodson. Thank you.
This council voted to say that the Saanich municipality asked the province to exclude us from the speculation tax. Just recently at UBCM, Niels Jensen presented and got the support of the Union of British Columbia Municipalities to ask the province to do the same. The province has said no. So one thing is, whether we like it or not, it's here. The question is, to me, is it delivering the objectives of the stated intent, which is to improve housing availability and affordability? I think there's a significant question around that. I think there's a significant ask to the province for the opportunity to redesign these tax models, put them into the hands of the municipalities who know our landscape the best, and then deliver a better outcome to stimulate housing for you. On this basis, having come to understand this current form of the speculation tax, I do not support it.
Thank you for the question. It was a split decision of council, and we had a very interesting debate. And I think the debate that we had in council is very much reflected in the community, a divided opinion on it. My personal opinion is that I think the government has made a mistake, a really big mistake. It's called a speculation tax, but I think what we are really after is some kind of vacancy tax, where a home is truly vacant and nobody's living in it, and it's just sitting there. Where it has fallen foul of different parts of British Columbia, there have been exemptions in the Okanagan and in Whistler. As a result, in other places, the property transfers have been reduced, and so property transfer tax has gone down. And now the government, I think, is in a position where they're loathsome to remove this new tax because it's got now to make up, not just for other things, but for the lack of property transfer taxes that are being collected. So is the problem being solved? And does it have side effects? I don't think it's being solved. I think some of the side effects are just starting to show themselves now. So what can be done about it? Well, Vancouver has a model, and they operate under a different charter than we operate under. And they're able to manage it themselves and collect the money themselves and redirect the money somehow. The speculation tax money that will be collected from this region will probably end up in general revenue and spent in some other part of British Columbia. This council won't have control over it. And it's simply going to affect the housing market and the economy here in a way that we can't control. But Vancouver was able to appeal to the former government to do that. And so I've spoken with the minister about moving forward with this model so that we can decide to do that. Another step would be to make the decision whether we want to have it or not. That would be a community conversation. But at the moment, it's all tied up in provincial politics, and governments at that level tend not to want to take steps backwards. They tend to have to be thrown out of power sometimes or lose the election in ways that are fortunate or unfortunate. So that's where we are today.
I'm going to be straightforward about this. I don't know a lot about the speculation tax because it doesn't really interest me. I don't see a lot of empty properties in my neighborhood. They're full. There's lots of demand for properties in my neighborhood. So I'm curious, how many properties in Saanich are impacted by the speculation tax? Do we know?
Yes.
What is that answer?
I don't believe it, but I've been told 2,700.
2,700. Out of how many properties in Saanich?
40,000.
There you go. So it's not a big number, not a big percentage. So the impact to Saanich is going to be small. Be that as it may, is that the kind of hammer we need to use to prevent people from leaving their homes empty? And is leaving their homes empty such a bad thing? What kind of homes are being left? They're not the homes that we need in affordability. Those houses are filled. Oftentimes the homes that are being left empty are the homes that nobody wants anyway because they're too expensive. So why don't we focus on things we need, like more affordable housing? Why don't we focus on investments in our youth who have no place to live? How come we don't look at more options for the homeless? We don't need to be worried about the wealthy. They already have their money, and they already have their big houses. If they want to leave it empty, I don't care. Because nobody's going to rent it. let's focus on what needs to be done. Let's not waste time on things that are frivolous.
The next audience question will come from Peter Haddon. Peter will choose the speaking word.
Thank you, John. Let's start with you again, Rob, if you don't mind. Richard Atwell, thank you. And then with Fred, thank you. This is a different question. Little more focused. How should Saanich pay for replacing the public works yard? And how high a priority should this be for the municipality?
We're getting into an administrative question that I haven't approached at all at this point. How should Saanich pay for the replacement of the public works yard? Well, the public works yard is in a very valuable spot. So the land alone that it sits on has got to be worth a lot of money. So it seems to me that if you sell that land, you can probably buy something that's cheaper somewhere else. So that's just simple economics, is it not? But what else are we paying for? You know, if we move it to somewhere else, are we going to cause more transportation costs because we put it out of reach of other people that use it? So we have to measure what the real impacts are of moving that public works yard. I understand the value of that land because it's in a corner that really is busy and vibrant, and it needs probably more development of some sort. I was disappointed when the Bank of Montreal went up, or the Bank of Toronto Dominion Bank went up as a one-story building. It could have been bigger. So I certainly agree that selling the public works lands is a good idea, but the relocation of it has to be less expensive and more efficient for the transportation use before we can do that.
Thank you for the question. You're going to find a lot of agreements on this issue. And I do believe Haji Trani is in the office, or sorry, in the room here, and remembers when this site had been re-envisioned with the community as part of the Shredder consultation. Now, when you have to look at the public works yard to see what it is for what it is. It has a lot of purposes. You don't necessarily have to move it all to one spot. The police have a firing range there in a trailer. That doesn't have to be there. That could be anywhere. The garden waste drop-off, that could be moved. That doesn't have to be in one location either. It could be in 2 locations. That would be, I think, far more convenient. The public stores, or the stores take up a lot of space, but that's because they're outside and the pipes are rusting outside. Modern storage these days is done indoors in a smaller building with a forklift on shelves. So that's another solution. The Parks Department has offices there. You do need to relocate those offices somewhere. We also have fleet maintenance. We have storage for sailing solution for the winter roads and so forth. But when you look at all the things that are there, they're there because Saanich owned the land for a long time and it has grown to have those services. And they don't all need to be in the same place. They can actually be distributed around Saanich to much less inexpensive pieces of land. In fact, land that we already own on Markham Avenue and other places. And then we can set about the redevelopment of the site. Should there be a building for staff? I'm not sure. Should it be redeveloped? I'm absolutely sure. Could we lease some space? That's a possibility. Saanich should have leased some space at Uptown when it was built, part of the design. It was integral with the planning of that, but somehow didn't reserve any space for itself. Saanich could have bought the Wang building across the road. So we have to start looking down the road and really planning for this and creating a plan that meets all of those needs and all those functions, but we don't have to have them all at one pace at one expense. I think that we can actually make money from this deal. Thank you.
It's a good question, thank you. Do any of you in the audience remember the last 18 months where there was citizens' engagement in something called the Facilities Master Plan? One guy. Okay, 2 guys. Okay, it's dry stuff, I agree. Saanich went through 18 months. We hired a professional consultant, and he brought forward a Facilities Master Plan.
Sorry? I'm sorry, I apologize. He
So-
works for us, so I apologize.
Start again.
No.
I apologize. He
I'm
works
good,
for us.
I'm good.
Sorry.
I'm good. So the result of that Facilities Master Plan was not just to look at the public work yard, but all of our facilities. And we owned tens and tens of millions of your dollars in this city. It's about $1 billion of assets. And we churn on an operating budget of about $230 million. That facilities master plan came up with a hierarchy of all these buildings that need to move, or be renovated, or be reinvestigated, or be revitalized. And it's expensive, you can imagine. The public works yard is on that list, and I understand from that report and from listening to our staff that that is coming forward in a year or so, sometime next year, to have a comprehensive plan around doing what we can with that site. I'm in favour, if we can, of realising the cash potential. I understand it's about $20 million, and turning that site over to its highest and best use. Richard's made a good point that some of those components can be distributed out around Saanich, but sometimes there's a cohesiveness of having several integral parts of one site. So it is happening. There's a big asset there. Saanich Council worked on this 2 years ago to implement the facilities master plan, and sometime in early 2019, I believe we're going to see some of the answers that we've been talking about on this stage. Thank you.
So last question, 2 minutes for each of you to answer it, and then you go to closing remarks where you each get 2 minutes. So last question, and we've had variants come through from the audience as well, related to food security. So how do you propose to assure that Saanich has food security? We'll start with you, Mayor Atwell.
Thank you. This is a real challenge for us because the history of the colonization of the southern island has been at a rate that has far exceeded the farming capacity. This is as I understand it. So if you go back to the early settlement, so much food was coming in from boat, and then it started to balance out, and then it maxed out, I think, at about 85%. And ever since then, it's going down and down and down and down. And more food has been imported. I believe the average trip that goods take is about 1,500 kilometers. So that is far away. Now, we have a huge agricultural belt in central Saanich. But a lot of it's used for hay. A lot of it's productive, a lot of it's unused, and that is where the breadbasket has been for a long, long time. Saanich does play a role in terms of setting policy, but fundamentally, it's the economic